This may be not as elegant as some of the better ones out there, these pro fish keepers, real aquarists, but this is relatively straightforward and simple. 1/2-inch PVC, and I've created just a siphon pickup tube here. I did put a thread on here, so if I wanted to change this out and go for a longer tube, we could do that. A simple ball valve for shut off. And then this is a thread in, garden hose end as an additional safety. And so here I've just got a thread in adapter into the PVC elbow. You could even do a glue on just to take it to a regular garden hose, and then the shut off adapter. And then this is the 2-piece quick connect coupler that Walmart sells. Now with a garden hose I can simply connect this to the end of the garden hose. Boom, we're on, we're connected. I did have a problem down here. I needed an intake screen, and I just took some filter material and a rubber band. And the reason being, the guppies had babies, and they were so small I was worried about them getting sucked up. So this is just going to work on basic siphon principle. As long as we get enough drop here, and of course it's going to drop more with the hose, to overcome the lift we need. Once we get this siphon started, it'll continue under its own power. It's going to be a little slower than a pump depending on what your drop is. But no pump needed. This can simply hang here all the time. It's a little bit of an eyesore. You could take some, made for plastic, Krylon Fusion paint and paint it black so it doesn't stick out so bad. But for me, it didn't really bother me. Videos out there on working with PVC. In general, it's one of the most forgiving materials to work with. If you've got a saw that will cut wood, it will cut PVC. Power tools tend to create a lot of static, and then you have little bits of PVC that just cling to everything. So I prefer a hand tool. I'm going to be out exposed to UV, so I don't have that concern. That can be a concern if PVC is outside. Of course, this is not going to be a pressure application. There's never really going to be any real pressure to speak of on this, so we don't have that concern. And now we'll go look at the sink side setup and see what that takes. So on the sink side, these faucet ends can vary a little bit. This one happens to be the Delta setup. Here's your standard diffuser so that the water doesn't just come out, drop straight down. It actually spreads out just a little bit. This threads inside to this housing. But you thread this off, and you may have to take a pair of pliers, wrap a rag around it so you don't mar it up to break it loose. And this piece here is taking the place of this. And what we have is standard hose thread up here, and then thread at the bottom to put on a diffuser. You pull this off and take it into any of the hardware stores. They'll be able to match up for you. And all you're looking is a piece to thread into your faucet, and then give you hose threads here to hook up a garden hose. So that's what flow looks like without a diffuser on there. So that's why you'll want to have the ability to put a diffuser back on there. So anytime I need to actually do the aquarium water change, the only thing I have to do is unthread the diffuser piece. This piece stays in there and basically is going to be permanent for me. So on my faucet side here, I've threaded off the diffuser, and I've got the exposed garden hose threads. So I'll take the female side of the quick connect coupler. And we don't have to get this really tight because we're not going to be putting this under pressure, just flow. We're not going to shut off the other end and hold pressure here. So snug, but you don't need to get out a wrench. You don't need to get out Teflon tape and seal it as though you're leaving a permanent fixed, going to be under pressure connection. I'm going to just pull up. Now we've got a shut off valve here. We don't necessarily need it. I'll go ahead and open it for now, but you'll see where we might use that later. So here on the tank end, I've got my female end, and this would be the male end of the hose. And I've got my hookup here ready to go. We'll hook it on there, open the safety valve, open the main valve. So now we can get water flow through these valves. And back at the sink, we're open here. So now if we start the water, turn it on, we're going to flush all the air out backwards. And then once we disconnect, we've created a siphon. And you don't have to open the water to full pressure. What we can see here is we're flushing the air back out of this. And if you really want to give it a burst to make sure we flushed it all, shut it off, let it build just a little bit of pressure. And that's it. At this point, if we were to cut off the water over there, we've got enough of a siphon that this will flush out. Okay, so we shut off our water. Now, if we want to drain into the sink, all we've got to do is disconnect there. So literally just going to siphon the water out of the aquarium down the drain. Now, since I've got a septic system, and I don't necessarily see the need to put this through the septic, just that much additional, whether I take 30 gallons or 60 gallons or whatever, I don't need to cycle that through the septic, so I'm actually going to let this out in the yard. So with the shutoff here, I'll just shut this off. That'll keep it from leaking as I drag it through the house. And it'll hold the siphon because we didn't allow any air back up in there. We've still got all the water in that hose. And we'll simply take it out here as I trip over things. And there we go. And this can just run out here into the yard and water the yard for me a little bit. No, there's no pressure. This isn't going to spray out of a sprinkler. It wouldn't be able to do that. But as far as just getting it out of the house, if you don't want to feed it down the drain, if you've got any kind of decline in elevation, in other words, any kind of drop, the siphon will work. So here we are, it's completed emptying out. So here we are, I've drug my hose back in, and if you have any concerns about dripping any water across the floor as you bring it in, you can shut that valve. I'll go ahead and open it up. We've got our quick disconnect locked on there. I usually like to loop the hose up a little bit so it's not putting quite so much pressure there on it. Now, if you have some exotic fish that are really sensitive to temperature, you're probably more of a pro type, and you're not going to be watching a video from a guy like me, right? You're probably making your own that are much better than this. But at this point, I'll just turn it on. And that's full cold. I had thought about making some sort of adapter and putting a thermostat in there so that I could watch and kind of adjust the temperature, but I have not had a problem with these fish, mollies, guppies, and we've even got some goldfish in there now out of the boys. And we can see there we're just filling up. You will definitely not want to leave this unattended. There is no shut off on this setup except for the manual at the faucet. So if you walk away and leave this running, it will overfill, it will spill out. So definitely do not walk away from this. As far as dealing with the chlorine, this is the best thing I've found. A lot of the big box home stores have it. It's sold for pond use, koi ponds. It's like 3 times as concentrated and half the price of the pet store stuff. And it seems to work fine. I haven't had any issues with it. And I had calculated out based on, this is given in, I think 1,000-gallon increments on how much to put in. So I had to do the math and calculate out, and I figured on the 75-gallon, if I was getting about a third of that out, I was probably taking 50 gallons out. So for 50 gallons, I need about a tablespoon in here. And again, with these fish, I've never had an issue with this. They're not a real sensitive fish, any of them. Would they be a little happier? Gosh, if I used reverse osmosis purified bottled water, they probably would. But again, these are not some exotic saltwater fish. These are just real basic fish. Anyway, again, this is not some elegant, I'm not a professional aquarist. I'm not running a pet store. I'm not a breeder. I'm just a guy who wants an easier way to do a water change without a lot of expense or complication